on my channel. I'm watching my channel. I was like, I know we're live on my channel, but yeah, I forgot to add the other ones. You should be able to see them popping up though.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I want to wait. I want to make sure you see it. Do you see it? That way.
I went out to go back in, so yeah, it's there on Hot Program.
Okay, great. Yeah, and it should be on yours too. All right, so the the thing with doubt is like, all right, so let's say, all right, so those of you that are just joining us on Hot Program on our One Black Friends channel, sorry about that. We're going to be talking about how Christians deal with doubt today, and you know how it is. We get up and kind of think through, okay, what would be a good topic for today, and then sometimes it's you see what it's like Uncle Bob. You see what pops up on the feed, but doubt is really an interesting topic for me because when I started to talk to, I've been trying to politic this whole thing with my family, right? For people who don't know, I come from a family on my mom's side with like 5 generations of ministers. My grandfather's a Pentecostal bishop. My grandmother's the first lady of the church. His father was a bishop, and on and on. And on my dad's side, I think my dad's more like a nominal Christian, like, you know, good black men, you know, need to belong to a congregation type of Christian. He's not religious as far as I can tell. Never heard him pray or talk about God or read the Bible or mention it. He's just not religious. Anyway, on my mom's side, I tried to like play the long game, which to me meant, you know, having conversations with my mom where I could really work towards coming out as I felt, to be understood and accepted within the family as an atheist. And I feel like those conversations were kind of receptive. Like as long as I kept it about what I was dealing with, and you know, have been having this journey and I've found this new community, that was sort of all good. And when the conversation started to turn to, you know, recognizing that the faith that I no longer believe is the faith of the family, right? That she still does believe. And when it turned to like, well, does it matter to you if this stuff is true? That was the first time we had like a real weird conversation, because my mom gave me this whole song and dance, and I was like, really? Like I expected you to just be like, yeah, of course it matters if it's true, right? Like I didn't get that. It was like there was a recognition on some level that a simple yes or no wouldn't cut it, right? Because no makes you seem like a bad person, like you just don't care if what you're saying is true. So you can't say no, it doesn't matter if it's true. But at the same time, yes puts you on the hook for, you know, proof and arguably being wrong, and then having to leave it if it is in fact wrong. And it was like this whole, well, that's a good question, I'm not really sure, and I'm like, really? And then when we really first had a conversation about doubt, that did not go well, because me trying to suggest, hey, like, you know, and I tried to put it from the perspective of, I've seen these people lying to you, right? Like you got to put yourself in like a family situation where you're trying to tell your mom, I have sat next to you, watched these people lie to you, and watched you turn around and give them your money, and I'm a bit concerned about that, right? Where am I going with all this? That led to a doubling down, where it's like the door was open to the conversation, but as soon as the conversation went to a place of actually, you know, suggesting that there be some sort of doubt in the believer, oh, the tables flipped. All of a sudden, there's a whole song and dance, and then follow-up conversations were shut down. Right? From now on, we're in a shutdown place. And what I mean by that is, it's like, well, these conversations don't go well for us, and I don't know what you want me to do. I'm always going to be a Christian. Boom. Right? So it's hard. And to be honest, it's been a severe source of disappointment. Like, it's made me realize, like, my mom is a really problematic Christian in a way I wasn't quite aware of, and that she's at this point maybe not as dogmatic as her parents are, but she certainly seems to be close to that route. And when I thought my mother was at least a person who you could level with on your doubt and would be comfortable acknowledging some of the aspects of the faith that would cause someone to doubt, I don't see that. I now see doubt as a really sensitive subject to Christians, and what they really want to do is shut that noise down. But there's also this way, and I've experienced this in the church I was playing at, that a lot of Christians are aware of doubt, and they do feel like they need to have conversations about it. And so I thought this would be an interesting video. But what's your take? Because I know you got a lot of religious people in your family, and you're a former believer yourself. So I know that was my sort of open, but where are you at with this topic?
My doubt with Christianity began very simple, very innocent, sort of figuring that, oh, this is God trying to mold me, trying to get me to be more independent. And then finally realizing after committing to read the Bible that it wasn't worth believing. Not that that there isn't a value when people feel redeemed, right? Maybe they've lived an awful life and they've discovered the Bible, and in it reaches them, right? It tunes them, it helps them be replenished and feel valuable again. I mean, those people aren't reading the parts that says, your faith is like filthy rags, but whatever. You don't read the whole thing typically in Christianity. You jump around.
You read the highlights, yeah.
You read, exactly. You read only the hits. Give me the hits, Jesus. So for me, my doubt began on September 11th, 1991. If it was 91 when the towers were destroyed. 2001. Thank you. 1991. My gosh. 2001. Thank you for the correction.
No worries.
And it was my turn to witness at church on that day. And I said to the minister, I think given the events of the day, it's more important that, you say something.
Wait, do you remember that day? Because I thought that was I remember that being a school day. So were you
well, I went to church on weeknights and then on Sunday.
That's what I was getting at. I wasn't getting at your memories. I'm saying I was getting at. Damn, brother, you was in church during the week. You was yeah. All right, go ahead, man. That's all right.
Hallelujah. So that was strange because the people in the room, I seem to be the only person freaked out. Now, maybe they thought this was the beginning of the rapture or something like that, which is why they seemed to be in such a great mood. But I was freaked out. I mean, they sent me home from work. I showed up to work early that day, and my boss came in and she says, given what's happened, they're sending us home. So she said, go home. And I was watching it on my replay TV. And I was talking to my brother who was in the Marine Corps. Well, he's in the Air Force at that point. Navy, excuse me. And he was explaining, he goes, okay, here's what's happening around Los Angeles right now. Here's what's happening around New York right now. Here's what's happening around the country right now, giving me the military actions that would be immediately put in place given that something like this has happened. Talked about the grounding of the planes, whole 9 yards. So I'm utterly freaked out at church. And the minister's like, well, he said, no, you should still get up and give your testimony. I'm like, I don't think that's what's important right now. He goes, okay, well, you don't have to do it. And then he didn't talk about what had just happened when the towers got struck. And is it terrorism? And what does this mean for our nation? And how does this connect to our faith? He didn't talk about any of that. And I'm like, I'm sorry. There shouldn't be a disconnect here, in my opinion. So I began to doubt then, like, if these are the people who I'm looking to for guidance and they're so disconnected from the situation that they can't prove to me based on their behavior that it even mattered, right? thousands of people had just died as a result of it. We're a warlike culture here in the United States. Millions or thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands more will die as a result. And yet we're just reading the Bible.
I think
as if the rest of it doesn't matter.
Man, there's something that it seems to be that this is going to sound cruel, but it's a humanity to me. And it seems like some people, at the end of the day, there's a humanity in them that they can't deny or overlook or overcome that becomes their prime values. And then there seems to be other people who really, and I think the most charitable way for me to think about this, at least now, because I don't know why I'm always trying to be charitable about it, but I think for a lot of people, they have bought specifically into the God over man sort of position more than anything. And so when these type of things happen, like we were listening to a call the other night, and the guy basically was saying, yeah, I think everybody's deserving of death, and yeah, if God decided to take my life, I would still love him because I'm just the creation and he's the right. And so
the clay cannot say to the potter.
Yeah, the clay cannot say. Yeah, if the potter's mad and just wants to smash the fucking bowl on the floor because it didn't come out the way he wanted it. I mean, that's his right. Like,
not only don't clay pots speak, donkeys don't speak, bushes don't speak, snakes don't speak.
So yeah, I'm trying to figure out how we're different, like, because to me, if people don't understand that, to me that's an amazing question. How do people leave their religion? And there's some things we get, like, for instance, reading the Bible thoroughly seems to be one, right? But that's more a behavior. Anybody can read the Bible. It may be a behavior that turns out to be, causative or play some real role there. But I'm interested in thinking about what makes the people different, right? And some of that I imagine is personality traits, right? And so I think looking back on it, I think we buy into religion for different reasons. So for me, I bought into religion for what I now feel like, looking back, are humanistic reasons. Now that humanism is more or less about, and I don't think I'm like squarely aligned perfectly with all humanists or whatever, but it's about where I'm at, right? And I realize now, that's what appealed to religion to me. If you would have asked me about my grandparents, and you say, "Oh, Jay, I heard your grandparents are ministers, yada yada, that's cool," I wasn't going to tell you about how many people are in my grandfather's congregation. The answer is actually not an impressive number. I wouldn't tell you about the history. I wouldn't tell you about his theology. I would be like, my grandparents are the type of people who do actually visit the sick and shut in and, try to bring food to the less fortunate and do the food, right? In other words, the humanism, the community service of it, that's what attracted me to the religion and to religious and religious figures in the movement, right? And I just think what you were speaking of speaks to the fact that I think for some people it's not that. And so you can walk into that room and realize the desperate state that humanity's in that moment. But for other people, if they think that that's part of God's plan and they think that they're more emotionally invested in God's plan than you know what I'm saying, than human concerns, then I think that may be one of those differences. I don't know. I'm just
I think you're onto something there. I mean, if they surely believed, of course, I don't know what's in their minds, right? If they surely believe that this is all part of God's plan and he's making sure things unfold divinely, and that we are Christians and we are loved by him and we will be seen to, our needs will be met. And we hope that God has mercy on the people who died, whether they were the attackers or the attacked. Amen.
Absolutely.
If that's where they are, I mean, Great day to be a sociologist and an anthropologist.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I'm standing in the right place for that sort of thing at that time. But it's not what I saw was needed.
Yeah.
It's not what I noticed. Again, for me, something was wrong. It wasn't simply God's plan unfolding. It was someone else's very awful plan unfolding.
Did you connect it to the religion right away? Because sometimes people will think it's
No,
the bad
no.
church
And
or I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time type deal.
I still don't think that I could point a finger at all of Islam. This is just a few guys with a heck of a lot of resources making it happen. That's all it ever took. And that's what it would take last week. That's what it would take today. Just some very committed people with not a lot of resources, but a plan,
Right.
and they just see it through. We see that within our own politics in this nation. If you look at the Republican Party platform, this is very few people dreamed it up, and they have tens of thousands of people to enforce it. But it's not the plan of tens of thousands of people. It's not their design. It's what they're told. If you're going to be one of us, this is what we have to promote. Democratic Party's the same way. This is what we have to promote. So oddly enough, in the halls of power in this nation, the ideas of what should be are created by just a handful of people.
Mm. Do you
That's all it
remember
is.
quickly? Do you remember when you actually started to identify as an atheist or no longer a Christian?
Oh, I'd say I tell that story about how I was challenged by my friend on my biblical knowledge or whatever. So I set about reading the whole Bible, and by the time I got to the Tower of Babel, I couldn't believe any of it now. I would say that's probably 17 years ago. I continued to believe in a God until I was going to church, continuing to believe in God. And I went to a wonderful non-denominational church
Got you.
in
Yeah,
Los
did
Angeles.
too.
It was
Coming up.
just the people were like wonderful. And I remember sitting there one day and the minister is quoting a book that I'm reading. And I said, "You don't need to be here." After he did that, "You don't need to be here." I got the same book at home. And that was I began to phase myself out, going twice a month, then once a month, and then maybe once every 8 months or so. And that's it. But I went to the national, I forget what year it was. There was an atheist convention in Orange County, California. And I went there because I had a bunch of questions for Dr. Price at that time, with my little notebook. And I made it clear to people, I still believe in God.
Wow. You were one of
Oh,
them dudes.
I was one of
Wow.
them. And there were people who thought like,
Wow.
"Oh, that's funny. Like, why would you come here?" I'm like, "Oh, I got questions for Dr. Price." Nobody treated me poorly. I got to meet Richard Carrier, Aaron Ra, Hector Avalos, Dr. Price. I don't know. There's just a bunch of other people that I got to meet back then. Everyone treated me well, as I would say. But it wasn't long after I got my questions answered that I realized if there's a God in charge of it all, this God makes no sense. It is the equivalent of when I used to lay on my belly next to my little brother and we played with our action figures and Matchbox and Hot Wheels cars.
Yes.
It doesn't really what matters in the story because it all goes back in the toy box until you're ready to play again.
All right, you know what? I was just gonna say that's the perfect segue because I think the theme of Christianity and religion in general is that they're pretending, and the title of today's video is how Christians pretend to be okay with doubt. So you want to use that segue? Go ahead. Yeah, finish what you're saying.
No,
Go ahead.
I actually don't.
Yeah.
And
Finish what you're saying.
I will not tee it up so nicely as I just did.
It's all right. All right.
As many of our frequent viewers and listeners will know, I say that I think Jesus, if he was a historical person, him and his disciples were just LARPing. It's just live action role play. They read a bunch of stuff, or somebody read a bunch of stuff, and they believed it about what was supposed to happen. And I think even less of it than that. I think what is more true is some students wrote these stories.
Oddly plausible.
For a class. I'm sort of, there's a Robin Faith Walsh is sort of on the same page as me with that. So I was reading The Wisdom of Solomon, and let me take you there. So this is almost, let's see, Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2. I'm going to start in verse 10. Let us see if you can pick out a guy from history that this reminds you of. Just one guy, not two. This is written around 50 before the Common Era. Okay, so not Common Era, before the Common Era, not AD, but BC.
Yeah.
Okay. Let us oppress the poor righteous man. Let us not spare the widow, nor reverence the ancient gray hairs of the aged. Let our strength be the law of justice, for that which is feeble is found to be nothing worth. Therefore, let us lie in wait for the righteous, because he is not for our turn, and he is clean contrary to our doings. He upbraideth us with our offending the law, and objecteth to our infamy the transgressings of our education. He professeth to have the knowledge of God, and he calleth himself the child of the Lord. He was made to reprove our thoughts. He is grievous unto us, even to behold, for his life is not like other men's. His ways are of another fashion. We are esteemed of him as counterfeits. He abstaineth from our ways as from filthiness. He pronounceth the end of the just to be blessed, and maketh his boast that God is his father. Let us see if his words be true, and let us prove what shall happen in the end of him. For if the just man be the Son of God, he will help him and deliver him from the hand of his enemies. Let us examine him with despitefulness and torture, that we may know his meekness and prove his patience. Let us condemn him with a shameful death, for by his own saying he shall be respected. Such things they did imagine, such things they did imagine and were deceived, for their own wickedness hath blinded them. As for the mysteries of God, they knew them not, neither hoped they for the wages of righteousness, nor discerned reward for blameless souls. For God created man to be immortal and made him to be an image of his own eternity. So that's the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2. And that is verse 10 through 23. Verse 24 is the last one in that chapter, so I'll just give it to you. Nevertheless, through envy of the devil came death into the world, and they that do hold of his side do find it. Okay, so maybe people can put in the comment section who that reminds them of. Just anybody. Now, this is written before.
Right, it's source material. Yeah, exactly.
It's written before all of the New Testament. All of it. And right. It's using past tense. So now, as I have studied all this, when I had the idea that Revelation is actually older than the Gospels, it just made more sense to me that Jesus is trying to get a group of people together, a cult, or several, maybe even 7 churches together, to push his narrative. If it was a real guy.
Right.
That's the most charitable I can get. He was a con man. The most charity I can give the origin of Christianity is that it was started by a con man who was very good at what he did.
Right. And
the worst, it's just some student assignment, because it's so derivative of other things that it's not trying to be original at all.
Right. It's like it kind of reminds me of like when we take our students through a certain curriculum and then they have to do projects at the end of it in certain classes. Not the class I'm teaching right now, but there's this thing, and even me and Cliff can talk about it, where because there's only certain topics in the curriculum and there's a limited number of parameters in the program, students tend to come up with similar projects, right? Because they're all working
true.
from the same source material, and
Hey,
they've all
look.
have basically the same education in these topics. So to your point, this is like what you come up with, and it's a big deal to certain people now, but it's almost a trivial expectation given that this is exactly how students were taught to write. So.
Yeah, I would call it the volcano problem. Science fair. How
Right,
many
science
volcanoes are
fair.
you gonna see
Yes,
at the
it's the
7th
science
grade
fair.
science fair?
Exactly. That's 100% it. That's 100% the
You got your
vibes.
vinegar, huh? You
Yes.
got your baking soda, huh? I can
Yes.
guess what's gonna happen.
Yes.
Oh, you got Coca-Cola,
Yes.
you got Mentos,
Yes.
huh? I can guess what's gonna happen.
You got a volcano.
A
Somebody's
volcano
making ice cream, right, from the instant freeze stuff. Yeah, there's 4 or 5 projects you're gonna see at every science fair. All right, let's get into this video, man. It should be fun. This should be good. Here we go. I actually love that theme. It's just a fantastic.
good.
So
piece of
here's
music.
another animated video from the wonderful Impact 360 Institute, a YouTube channel about Christianity and apologetics that's labeled to sound like a school but isn't one. This time it's going to talk about whether Christians should doubt, so I guess let's dive right in.
The Bible is reliable. Or is it?
As much as I'd like to just blurt out, ha no, this is actually a sneaky question, because the Bible isn't just flatly reliable or flatly not reliable. Like practically any document from the past, it might be somewhat reliable depending on what you're using it for. Some books of the Bible might portray somewhat accurate names, events, or customs from the time they were written, while others might say little to nothing of historical value. So asking whether this compilation of writings by different people from different times is accurate as one body, much less taking reliability as an all-or-nothing proposition, is just absurd. Yet this question appeals to fundamentalist Christians who see the Bible as fully inerrant and take any challenge to its full inerrancy as meaning it's entirely fictional or might as well be. Getting them out of this mindset can be challenging, but it's the first step in properly understanding what it means to doubt the Bible. If that's what this video is really trying to help Christians do.
What do you do with doubt?
Good Christians do not have doubts.
You're not a very spiritual person, are you?
How dare you question God?
You ask too many questions.
You must not be saved.
Is it wrong to doubt the Bible? Well, what is doubt?
It's a little suspicious when someone replies to, is it okay to doubt something with, well, what is doubt? Kind of like if you asked someone, did you steal my car? And they replied, well, what is stealing? I mean, I guess it's good to be clear about the terms you're using, but at some point it becomes a red flag when someone asks what's meant by such an obvious word being used in such an obvious context. Look, to cut straight through the crap, here's what I see happening. The makers of this video are trying to pretend to be cool with the idea of doubts, even though they can't advocate for actually doubting Christianity. And within this first 22 seconds, they've already done a few things to help them walk that line. By showing us a bunch of characters firing back with things like,
You ask too many questions.
and
You must not be saved.
it poses a cartoonishly extreme reaction to doubt that's easy to distance itself from. Then by preparing to muddy the definition of doubt, it's giving itself room to adopt a hip attitude and intellectual rigor that's associated with openly questioning what you believe, while keeping the door shut on the prospect of actual disbelief. Now I bet you're curious how it's going to go on to define doubt. Well, I'm going to just play the whole thing before going back to review it.
It's your mind trying to learn, adjusting its grip on truth.
All right, so I just wanted to pause tape for a second because I just had a story come to mind, which is that when I worked at a church in Newark, New Jersey for a few years as a community organizer, I was like doubt. I remember like dealing with doubt then, and I remember talking to the minister about it, and I remember kind of the same type deal where there was this way in which we were like made to feel like it was okay to doubt. And I even remember talking about this. I had a wedding at some point in my life. It was a religious thing. I've never legally been married, so I call her my Jesus wife. But I remember talking about that at the ceremony, and like thanking the pastor and being grateful that like I had worked at this ministry where like it was okay to have doubts. And I actually remember that was the comment I made that like people spoke about the most. So it's kind of interesting because you're like, it's just something I said. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. But yeah, I kind of am remembering all of this now, and it's super interesting because in a way, Danny, the pastor that I worked for, and I don't know if he I don't think he was this way maliciously or anything like that, but he's one of those. It was definitely one of those periods where it was like we talked about doubts, but really I think it wasn't really like doubting the faith. It was this other thing where it was kind of conflated with just a sense of doubting yourself. Right? Because it wasn't like it's not like we were sitting around going, I don't know if I'm a Christian or not. I don't know if I think God is real or not, right? But we would talk about doubt. And I think, honestly, now that I think about it, it's almost like doubt was a stand-in for like your sin struggle, right? It was almost like you were doubting if you were really capable of like living the way you were supposed to live. And I remember like my uncle, God rest his soul, making fun of me, like basically trying to like tease me, like trying to say or something that I wasn't a Christian because I'd like talked about this. I mean, this is all a big mess. But yeah, I'm literally like reliving because he's talking about like how emotionally loaded this all gets, and you get into the twists and contortions, and then you got these people pretending they're okay with it, but they're really not. And I'm like, oh yeah, wow, I lived this. And then also like that pastor was really into like, that's when I got into like the purpose-driven life and all these sort of Christian authors, The Case for Christ, right? Who's that dude?
Lee Strobel.
Lee Strobel, right. So he was really into that, right? So in a sense, he was introducing me to apologetics, right? But it was so early, like I don't know if he recognized it as apologetics or if he just thought of it as like powerful Christian pop authors or whatever. And I certainly didn't have a clue what was going on. All right, but yeah, that's just some personal stuff. Do you have anything there before we go?
I'm sure if we scoured YouTube, we would find entire sermons where the minister just tells people from his congregation, come on up to the microphone and tell us what you doubt. I think such an activity could be extremely unifying. And what you have, this is why, again, I think the Bible is so beautifully constructed in terms of making itself fairly watertight to where it's self-fulfilling, self-perpetuating, that sort of thing. So if I'm a minister and I have my congregation come up to the microphone and talk about their doubts, I am immediately making you admit what you doubt in front of your support system. So there'll be people who will come up and reinforce your belief. I don't have to do anything but get paid. They'll just reinforce your belief. You will feel edified and strengthened in your faith. Look how my community stepped up for me and they supported me and they guided me. I needed money to pay my electric bill. It was whatever, $102. Somebody gave me $102. Another person gave me $50. I have way more than I need to pay my electric bill, blah, 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 blah. And the system works. It's fantastic. But if I go up there and I say, I have doubts because babies are born with cancer and incurable diseases and deformities, and some babies are even born with tails, which if evolution is false, why does that even happen? And I don't think it's man's sin why a baby is born with a tail. And you can just go on like that's much harder. Then they have to say to me, well, you just have to believe, which I heard a lot when I was a Christian, because I'm trying to process the external world, right? The world outside of the congregation with the meeting of the congregation.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to make sense, one from the other from the other. It's not happening. It's not happening. My questions are, and I've heard this a lot in my life, you're too smart for your own good. I'm like, it's working out well so far. So
the blessing and the curse, that's what I call it.
Yeah. That's Shakespearean sickness and it's cured together from Shakespearean love. But there's I think there's a value to expressing your doubts. So if you're a Christian and you're watching this, don't be bashful. It's certainly a safe place to do it talking to us.
Sure.
Because we're not gonna beat you down for having doubts and ridicule you and all that stuff. No, go ahead and have your doubts. They can be very liberating. I would say in a situation like this, the process of talking the person out of the consequences of doubt, which is leaving ultimately, right?
Right.
It's leaving. I'm leaving. I'm taking my gifts. I'm not going to play guitar for you anymore. I'm not going to sing here anymore. I'm not going to be in the parking ministry anymore. I'm not going to contribute cash anymore. You are pulling yourself out of the system, and now they have to replace you with 3 people because you did so much. They now have to convince 3 people to do the things that you did.
Yeah.
Because you won't be there. So it's sort of damage control to present a sermon or a little video like that, where you're trying to keep people in. It's the sunk cost fallacy. It's crypto. It's crypto, dude. I got, what is it? Is the expression diamond hands or something? Whatever, you put your money in and you're not going to take your money out. You're going to ride it down. If it goes down, you're going to be there at the bottom since you were there at the top, you know.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But anyways, just damage control.
Absolutely. That's great. All right, let's go. Oh, go ahead.
Key word, control.
Control. Yeah.
As you move through life, some of your ideas about reality become more firmly positioned in your mind, while others become less certain. These need to be examined from time to time. If they're reaffirmed, they're inserted back into your belief system. If not, they're thrown away and replaced with a new, updated understanding. This ongoing process of establishing or revising enables you to keep growing in your understanding of reality.
So here's an interesting activity. Based on that rambling thing we just heard, tell me how this video defines doubt. You probably can't, right? The closest they got was, it's your mind trying to learn, adjusting its grip on truth. And while this is phrased as a definition, it more just describes an ongoing growth process. The process, as they go on to explain it, involves doubt, as just one among many other factors, but it's a tentative, often involuntary kind of doubt that's so vanilla and non-threatening that Impact 360 can endorse it without running afoul of most fundamentalists. A quick review will make that clear.
As you move through life, some of your ideas about reality become more firmly positioned in your mind, while others become less certain.
So first we have the kind of involuntary doubt that just sneaks up on you, as you notice some of your beliefs seem solid while others might seem questionable at a glance.
These need to be examined from time to time. If they're reaffirmed, they're inserted back into your belief system. If not, they're thrown away and replaced with a new, updated understanding.
And here we have more active or voluntary doubt, the kind you have to choose to engage with by examining your.
That's not how Jenga works. That tower of blocks that they're using, they're putting things back in. Once you remove one, it doesn't go back in.
Right.
It doesn't.
It doesn't go back in. That's a good point.
And I don't know if it's officially played where you're supposed to restack whatever you take out to try to keep it in balance. But it certainly doesn't go back in once you pull one of
those out. The thing where you got to put it back. That's the hood. That's on hard mode.
That's the hard part.
Yeah, so, where you gotta take it and replace it.
So to maintain balance.
Yeah.
In a way, if they had
Yeah.
respected the game more, it strengthens the analogy.
Yes, because that's what people are really afraid of, is you start pulling out some of them pieces. And I was that guy who, like, if you didn't build it right, like my early moves, I'm trying to slide out one of them bottom pieces, and then it's no way it's good. You know, somebody is just not gonna be adept a finger enough once I undermine the stability of the entire tower.
Yeah.
And the thing that I think is, I was thinking about this when you were talking earlier, because that's the real issue here, where a person will have this conversation or thinking about doubt. It's so vague, it's so amorphous that I don't really think it's an actual recognition of the issue. Like, I'm not trying to say that Christians don't. Yeah, matter of fact, I don't know. I don't know if they even acknowledge the possibility of a world in which God isn't real. But that certainly, at least in my experience, is not what a Christian conversation about doubt is. Like you said, if you sat them down at a round table, it'd be interesting to see how many went there. How many say, I doubt God exists, or I doubt Jesus rose from the dead, or I just think at least many people would. Doubt would be something else, right? And then I think the real concern isn't even meeting the doubt on its face. The concern is the Jenga thing. And it's most of the bricks are like social or emotional, or their relationships, and right? And they're all the things that are sort of built upon those lower level bricks. And I think, to your point, if they didn't replace the bricks, or didn't slide them back in the same place, at least, right, they would sort of convey that message that a lot of times, pulling and losing, or even more so having to replace, can topple this whole thing.
I almost wonder if a better example wouldn't have been to, you're label every block. If I'm a Sunday school teacher, or I'm teaching, Bible study or whatever, I'm going to take two of these. I'm going to take this tower. I'm going to take all the pieces apart, give that to everybody in the group. I'm like, you have to write on these, your emotional aspects that make you a Christian. Facts, emotional aspects that make you a Christian. And we're going to take all this and we're going to build a tower. Like the things you're sure of, the things you're unsure of, your doubt, the complications, write all that on these blocks. And now we make the tower. But we label everything in a way where from the outside, you can't see what that block says. And as we're trying to balance the tower, right? We're trying to balance the tower. What we do with everything we take out, if it's worth keeping, we don't try to shove it back in. We use it to build a new tower. And all the stuff that's not useful, we set aside. Like if doubt is one of those things,
Sure.
If masturbation is one of those things, well, we're building a new tower. You don't need masturbation here.
I don't know what tower you're building. I'm not building that tower.
I'm not building an ivory tower.
I'm not building
But at any rate, I know what you mean. You guys get my meaning on that. So I'm essentially trying to build the strongest. Well, we are trying to build the strongest possible faith, based on choosing the very best of our ideas, the very best of our behaviors, the very best of our world.
Right.
So that's why it's eventually, it might be a shorter stack, but everyone would agree it's only made of strength. So it's going to stand, right? There is in Mark chapter 9, Jesus is talking to a guy and he says, he wants his kid healed. And Jesus says, I believe, help me thou my unbelief. Again, excuse me, the beauty of the Bible is it's so extensive. They got an answer for everything, pretty much. And so, again, don't be frustrated. Don't be too frustrated if you're talking to a Christian person, or if you are a Christian person and someone gives you that example. There are tons of examples in there. It's just an extensive book. It's roughly 1,300 pages. They cover a lot of ground.
Right.
They really do. So the thing about doubt, I see doubt as a good thing. If I I built a bike, I had to make some changes to it because when it came to measuring the rear hub, I forgot to do it. So I bought one thinking it would fit, and I spent $150 in labor and spokes getting this wheel built, only to have to spend darn near $300 taking it apart, putting a new hub in it that actually would fit. Had I, before I ordered, just doubted, got my calipers out and checked,
Right.
I could have made the right decision the first time and not have $300 worth of regret and about 20 minutes of foul language and me being frustrated and having to leave the room. You know, there's things like that where doubt isn't bad. Engineers have discussions about how they're going to build your building or build a bridge or whatever. Project managers have discussions, and sometimes they get heated. The people who designed your car had accountants staring over them and some sort of project director going, "You have to convince me that we need a grade 8 bolt for this or grade 8 screw. This is just to hold on an escutcheon to a seat. We don't need a high grade steel screw to do that. We can use a cheap screw for that. You know, do we design it to last 10 years? Or like a Toyota, is it designed to last more than 10 years?
Right.
And how much do we charge on the back end for that? There's all these decisions that go to because somebody is doubting. Well, are the public going to accept this? The Dylan Mulvaney thing, right? There are people who, now that Bud Light did this tiny little gesture for this person, all these people are in an uproar because they're doubting something, right?
Right.
Not because look, if you just like drinking Bud Light, are you really going to let someone you don't know who wasn't trying to offend you? The answer for thousands of people is yes.
Right.
I had to write a few times, quit being so fragile. If you like the stuff, keep drinking it. If you don't, whatever. You're probably healthier without drinking it. But that's the way it is. Doubt is useful. And again, from the standpoint you hear me say religion is useful, this is one of the useful parts of religion, because doubt is an essential piece to religion. Because why? Based on the odds, enough things will go right that you will be more sure that your religion is true for most of the people than that it isn't true.
Yeah.
So God is beating the odds, whether he's there or not.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem, because the superficial way that people pretend to be okay with doubt but then don't really doubt is what allows them to then have these false narratives in their head, like, oh, well, I actually did go through a period of doubt. I can just imagine these debate me bros and philosophy guys going, oh no, I did doubt my faith and all of this, and it doesn't mean to us what they think it does.
Well, the whole doubting your faith thing, there becomes, again, it's so complicated, and a person could fear losing interactions with that group. Let's take Jehovah's Witnesses. If you leave the community, you leave the Jehovah's Witness community, your family's not supposed to talk to you. In Scientology, there are people, they'll tell you not to talk to you because they're a suppressive person. There are loads of people you can interact with, but if someone is deemed a suppressive person, you can't, or you're not supposed to. And a lot of people, you know, it's their faith. They take it extremely seriously because they don't want to lose their faith. They don't want to suffer this or that consequence. It's their spiritual walk, their journey. Okay, well, I guess I understand that. And those people have to decide, is this truly best for you? And they often will, well, I still want to see my mom. I still want to see my sister, my brother, my cousin. And so they break the rule. and they choose love over authority. Someone put their thumb on them. So I don't know. I don't envy religious people for this whole doubting business. Granted, I went through it, but obviously, I don't know that I went through it like most people do.
I don't think you can be intellectually honest without going through it. So I think it's, growing up is part of growing up, and to me, you can't fully participate in society in an intellectually sincere way if you're not really willing to doubt your claims. And I do believe that there's, I do believe like the whole Hitchens razor thing, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So in a sense, I believe most religious people are severely problematic in the sense that they insist on being seen as and treated as, in some sense, the most honest people in the room, when they, have built a lot of their identity around ideology that they're not willing to question, which makes them the least honest people in the room, right? So, all right, let's try to get through this. Appreciate you.
Believe. The video points out that one of two things might happen when you do. One, you reaffirm your belief and file it back in your mind.
Go ahead.
Is this James Apperson?
No, this is.
I know it's not.
Oh,
the
man.
voices are so similar.
Trustworthy.
James, if you're listening,
Or
hello.
two, you recognize it doesn't stand up to scrutiny and get rid of it. Now, this is such a common sense observation that it seems unremarkable. But notice how everything is set up in a way that gives the video an easy out. If you go through this process of doubt and end up at option 2, then nothing disruptive or even noteworthy has happened. You've just thought about your beliefs and realized they're true. Now, did this even involve doubt? Well, possibly, depending on what you mean when you use the word. Are you just talking about having any nagging questions about something you're pretty certain is true? About a lack of absolute certainty in something you think is likely true? About seriously wondering whether it's true? Or considering it so suspect that you don't believe it? All these can fall under the umbrella of doubt. So which are Christians okay with? Well, most can be more or less cool, in theory, with the idea of asking questions. But doubting your faith to the extent that you seriously suspect it's not true is generally not so acceptable. So here's the conundrum this video.
I just want to say this is a really good point. And this is kind of what I was talking about, is that most people doubt is down here in the green zone, nagging questions about something you're pretty sure isn't true. And for the most part, it's probably, pretty sure is true. Yeah. I think it's a petty sense of doubt. And also, to me, I don't know if it'll touch on it, but I also think it's problematic that the way the rest of this is addressed with circular reasoning. It's like, oh, well, what does the Bible say to help me with this nagging question I have about the Bible? And that's what I mean about not really, going the whole way. And then also there's the thing where it's like, well, let me ask my pastor, right? And then the furthest you might get is, for a lot of people, is the Christian bookstore. Right. And so they're not ready, not just for the real conversations about doubt, which would require getting towards the red, not the green, but they're also unprepared for the realities of how you address those doubts. In other words, you don't go to your pastor Bible or Christian bookstore.
Well, if you're like me and somebody throws that Socratic method at you, just be prepared to be unprepared. Because maybe it's time to really think it through, and not from up close, but to step away, take a step or two back and look at it. And for me, that's what got me out of religion. When being up close and in the caught up in the beauty of it all, which for me wasn't the God portion. After a while, after I began to doubt sufficiently, it was the people, because I was around at that non-denominational church. Just wonderful people. Love seeing. I'm still in conversation with some.
I want to mention that real quick.
Yeah.
Just because it came, and I say this about, you know, the same thing about the churches I've been a part of, and I just realized, like, that's the deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the salesperson, right? And it's not a knock on the people. It's just a thing I think we should be aware of, right? It's a cult, right? And that's their selling, that's their thing, right? Their thing is to be these wonderful, caring, loving people. But yeah, that's it. God, that's.
I think
Powerful
them
key
being
notification.
loving, caring, wonderful people is just them being who they are, right? When, in a way, I'll say the church setting invites people to fearlessly reveal that side of themselves,
Sure.
which we can agree is a good thing. Now, if they could walk out of the church and be just as generous and as patient and as kind, that'd be wonderful. But I worked in the parking ministry. I know how people really are. So
Yeah, no, but that's what I mean.
they don't
That-
even
that-
show up in the parking lot.
But it's the same thing. Like when I was waiting tables, right? When I'm waiting tables, I want to know your name and I want to make sure and let's go to the, you know, to the over and above, right? But I don't care about this person. But to your point, this setting brings out the service in me, right? And I don't. And again, it's not a critique of the people. It's more of a it's just saying that as people who are outsiders and are often working against the interest of the organization, we just have to be aware that you're gonna oppose some very nice people in this and that and I just think people need to be aware of that, because oftentimes we use it as an excuse, right, to be like, well, I can't challenge this person, or I can't go there with a certain person, and it's got to be like, yeah, I get it, they're a really nice person, but you got to understand at the end of the day, that's how religions get people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's all I was trying to say.
Let's take you out of the restaurant. You're gonna do the same job now in a soup kitchen.
Right.
Your interest in people genuinely will change. Then I say, okay, now I'm going to take you to like a battered spouse shelter.
Sure.
Where you see parents and children. It's going to change even more. Your empathy is going to go way up doing the exact same job. If I told you you make most of your money off of tips here at the shelter or here at the soup kitchen,
right.
The way you approach a job is completely different. Because it's no longer about what you can gain. It's about what you can give. And church, if it's a prosperity gospel church, it's probably about what you can gain, not what you can give. And yet Jesus will tell you it's about what you can give. And the more you give, the more you gain. Your treasure is stored up in heaven, not down here on earth. How many Lexi, whatever, do you see in the parking lot?
Yeah, too many.
How many BMWs? How many Mercedes?
Right.
You know what? Again, Jesus would have a hard time identifying Christians,
right,
if he came to the United States. Like, wait.
But that's what I mean. But their narrative is that they give, right? Because they give 10% of the church. They give and so they're not seeing this. They're not seeing and feeling the selfishness of their behavior. They're seeing and feeling the reinforcement, because their giving nature is being essentially appropriated by the church, right? And so
these are the fruits.
Yeah.
Kenneth Copeland has all these planes.
Right. These are the fruits. Keep giving to the church and you'll keep getting.
It's just fruits. You will know them by their fruits. It doesn't say you will know them by their nice stuff. It doesn't say that.
But they're flipping that, right? What they're saying is to me, you've got that Lexus because God has been provisioning for you. Now you continue to give your tithes and offerings and service to the church, and then God's going to continue to bless you. So then the narrative doesn't become, I'm selfish and hoarding resources so I can keep up with the Joneses. The narrative is no, what you see the McMansion I live in, you see the Corvette in the outside, but what you don't realize is it's because I give. It's because of the way the way I
for the Lord.
Yes,
Yeah,
I give to my church and I serve. I play drums on the weekend and I give to the poor through our ministry, right? And so then God keeps blessing me with it. It's like you're trying. It's almost like the narrative you tell yourself is, I'm trying to give away all my riches. God just keeps giving me more for every time I try to give it.
Faster than I can distribute it. But there's another side to this, and it plays right into doubt. Those people who are sitting in the pews who are diligent and yet they're struggling. How come that guy who I know cheats on his wife, that guy who I know will steal from his customers, and he comes in here and look at him like he's prospering? Well, if you could say it to anybody sitting nearby you in the pew, if you could be that open and that honest about your frustration, they will say, God says my rain falls on the just and the unjust. It's all part of God's plan. Conversation over. Keep doing what you're doing. The Lord is going to bless you. Not in your time, my favorite thing to hear, but in his time. So those sorts of things are meant to diffuse doubt and keep you what? Complacent and returning to your seat in the church every week, or like me, twice a week at least.
And I'm gonna just throw this out there, man. This is, to me, what happens a lot in our communities around sensitive conversations. I know that's a hard left for most people, but what I see happening is people throw themselves in the middle of a mess, right? And then when chaos happens around them, what happens? It pops the algorithm. So in a sense, it feels like you've done something that people are growing from, whether that's the reality or not. It's just it's crazy to me how the social dynamics of these things tend to inform one another. All right, let's get back into this video. This has been really fun, really fun. All right, hang on. Mouse control.
Video faces. It can tell us this kind of doubt is okay, but absolutely not this one, and these ones are shaky at best. Thus, when it gives people permission to ask questions about Christianity, it's with the understanding that they're going to come up with a specific answer. I mean, that sounds like a crass way to put it, but what else does it mean if this is okay and this isn't? Unless it wants to come out and say, this kind of doubt is okay, which probably not. And that's the core pretense of this video. It dances between these two concepts, knowing both of them fall under the word doubt, and tries to take credit for being okay with doubt.
All right, I want to keep this going because I got to leave at 5:30. I'm gonna make sure we can try to get through this. But anyway, if we don't get through all of it, it's fine. What I now recall very vividly about my earlier experience with doubt, and it is kind of tied to the wedding to my Jesus wife, and I think it's because that period represents a time when I was working at a church, right? So it's a very intense time in my faith journey because literally working at a church was my full-time job. And the person I was, having the ceremony with was also worked at the same church. As a matter of fact, I was her supervisor. And then we're sort of having this all play out because the reception was at my grandfather's church. And, there's a whole different religious context. And so it was sort of one of the few times where my family and friends outside of the context of the church I worked at were able to hear me and us describe where we were at in our faith journey, right? And it was because it was a wedding and yada yada yada. So anyway, it was really where these things came in. So that's why. But anyway, one of the things I'm remembering now vividly that he said there, and I've kind of been hinting at this throughout this conversation about doubt, is that when I say the pastor and the ministry I worked at was really comfortable discussing doubt, it was in this green zone. Right? Nagging questions about something you're pretty sure is true, right? Or maybe something like, for instance, I believed in evolution. A lot of them, maybe some did and others didn't, right? And for me, that would have been a safe thing to have doubt about, because I would have, been able to come to like, well, I clearly believe in evolution. There's clearly evidence for it. Oh, I guess I can put this to bed. It's clearly okay to think that evolution's all right because that's what I was taught in school. Like that type of level of doubt, right? And but when I mentioned doubt at the wedding, there was ridicule from my family, because this is now the first time people in my family and friends outside of that church setting and outside of me playing drums are actually getting to hear me talk about my faith. And I'm mentioning doubt, and it's interpreted as this red zone doubt, right? Considering the idea so suspect you don't believe it. Now, why is that? Why am I trying to make a profound point about this? Because this is what makes real doubt so unsafe for Christians, right? They might just be actually doing green level doubt. Hey, I've just got some nagging questions, yada, yada, yada. But if that is perceived as doubting the faith or doubting their identity or doubting the Bible in some grander way, they now get stage 4 ridicule for stage 1 doubt. Which means stage 1 doubt feels unsafe to them, and stage 4 doubt ain't ever gonna happen. For most people, you see what I'm saying? No, it's crazy, and I'm realizing that that's what was happening, and I'm literally realizing that in real time as we're reacting to this video. But yeah, I was having these little doubts, and I was getting ridiculed from my family, right? Acting like I was about to leave the faith, and I got to be honest with you, that probably kept me in a hell of a lot longer, and probably informed the insecurity that I've, sort of never really gotten over when it comes to talking to them about my lack of faith. But yeah, this stuff is happening. I don't know if you had anything else, Mama Black Frank.
No,
put you on the big screen. Oh, okay.
Oh, well, I guess.
Sure.
I guess I do. My fiance's tuning in.
Oh, hey, welcome.
She said something 1,000 years ago, and she's a Christian, and we were having a discussion. We're fine. Good for you guys. I already told her. Awesome. Already told her our children are more than likely going to be atheists, and they'll have my sense of humor. So she'll be laughing all the time, and some of it will likely be uncomfortable. She said something quite beautiful. She says, no one has faith all the time. Now
that's interesting. Yeah.
That's incredibly strong, because I think it's true. I think a lot of Christians probably don't do much with their doubt, right? There's not much exploration there, because there's the return to the idea that I just have to have faith. And then there's all those scriptures that reinforce the idea,
Yes.
My mind goes to Thomas in the story where Jesus says, look, Thomas, thrust your fingers into my side. You want to really believe it's me? Now, again, I'll point out, as other people have before me, that the Bible doesn't say that Thomas touched him. He just stands there, my Lord and my God. Translation into modern English, dude. So most people will never get an opportunity like that. Right? Did Jesus really die and come back to life? Was he really resurrected? Was he really who he said he was? We don't have access
Mm.
to the historical Jesus. We have stories.
Mm.
We have stories which we know have inconsistencies. We have stories which we know have big problems. And if you're like me, the stories have huge problems. If you're Dennis McDonald,
Huge problems.
Dennis R. McDonald, the story has huge problems. Stories have huge problems. Robin Faith Walsh, same thing, huge problems.
Right.
So for some of us, by the look we've taken at it, it's not so simple. But an average minister just getting started can always come back to, you just have to have faith. This one woman I knew,
yeah,
she had this song. She's a great singer. She had this song, and she says, I can't show you anything empirical, but give me a moment and I can show you a miracle. Something like that.
Yeah, that's good.
So, oh yeah, she's got the goods, man. She's got the goods. But something like that, there are people for what she says, right? If she were to speak that to them or sing it to them, it's enough.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
And that for the sake of whatever religion, that's powerful. That's all it takes. I'll give you an example. I got this guy, I invited him to church. He ended up getting baptized. It was a big victory for the faith. And as many of you have seen, I've been putting on weight. I got a couple pills that effectively cease my metabolism. But he and I would go work out. And I remember one day we were in Gold's Gym in Venice, California. And he had me bench pressing more weight than I thought I could. And I said, hey, Michael, do me a favor. I'm going to blindfold myself with my towel. Victory, and fight angels from Africa right now. I love
angels have even dispatched from Africa right now. From Africa right now.
I don't know why I don't have a shirt. This is Africa right now. Anyway, someone should make one. But I said, I'm going to blindfold myself with a towel. Now, this created a lot of interest in the gym. I said, you've already got me lifting more than I thought I could. So I said, as quietly as you can, put weights on the bar. I'm bench pressing. Put weights on the bar. I don't want to know how much you put on there until after we're done. Now, he thinks this is interesting. So a couple guys, like they're like, oh, we'll help. And they just loading this thing up. I hear clang, 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 and I'm getting worried because all the clangs. And he goes, okay, try to lift it. And no problem. He put more on it. No problem. And this continued until I couldn't lift it. Like I physically was crapping out with my strength. And he did something that has happened to probably a lot of you if you have a partner that your workout partner. He put just the tiniest bit of help, right, to pick the bar.
Sure,
the tiniest bit. I can tell it wasn't much. And I lifted the weight right up.
Mm-hmm.
We backed it, put it back on the thing, and I sat up and I took the towel off my eyes. And it was like 245 pounds. You couldn't have convinced me I could lift that much.
Sure.
But I did. Because again, this might be good for ministers. You know, maybe we could sell this atheist sermon. But because the heavy lifting was really done by me, and all he did was add a little to get me there. If you're doubting, maybe you still want to believe, right? Most of your assessment is that it's true. Doubt is just a piece.
Sure,
if you get someone who picks that up,
right.
You can put your faith right back where it was.
Right. And then you're back to having superhuman strength.
Superhuman strength.
That's fantastic. And I just wanted to add that I think that that's what church is for. And I do, like, to me, non-congregational Christians are weird to me because it's like the dudes who are having the debates and the philosophy. And some of them go to church, but a lot of them feel disconnected to that because that's the experiences throughout the week. Things are getting you down. You're kind of struggling. You go to church and you get the worship, the experience, you get imbued with the faith. And to me, that's what helps you with the lift, right? And the difference is it reinforces your message, which is you just got to have faith, rather than whatever the heck apologists are doing, because it's like that's not what's getting people through. Most people are getting through on you just got to have faith. And to your point, doubt is like, it's like a mood thing. Like, oh, you may have had a couple of doubts on Thursday or Friday, but you knew if you pushed through to Sunday, you know, you'd be good to go.
Yeah, that's all it takes. Again, the psychology of it is very powerful. And I, as an ex-girlfriend once said in a conversation, although she misspoke and it was brilliant, she tried to say Nobel Peace Prize, but she said Nobel Priest Prize. And I said, I'll be repeating that. Those guys would have won a Nobel Priest Prize if there was such a thing, because they figured out the psychology of keeping and I don't use this term as a bad term. They were shepherds of the flock, and
Sure.
They got really good at keeping their flock contained.
Yeah.
They got really good at fighting off the lions and the wolves and the people that would attack their flock by putting it in a book.
Yes.
That most people at the time couldn't even read. Most of the people who were supposed to follow the rules in the book couldn't read the book.
Yep.
Brilliant. The Torah, you're supposed to have your son write their own Torah. I don't even know if they do that now.
Right.
I'll have to ask some Jewish friends. I know Christians typically don't.
Right.
You're not writing all that out, so you're familiar with what? The congregational history or the whatever ethnic history, if you will, but whatever. Anybody can be Hebrew. Anybody can be, well, maybe anybody can be Jewish. Anybody can be Jewish because it's called Judaism now. But you study the Hebrew religion, you become a part of it. You follow the principles. Congratulations, you're grafted into the vine. It's not a difficult process. You know?
All right, here we go.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Probably not. And that's the core pretense of this video. It dances between these two concepts,
Smash that
knowing
like
both
button,
of them
gang.
fall under the word doubt, and tries to take credit for being okay with doubt. But the pretense runs even deeper when you think about it, because it's not really okay with doubt in any sense of the word. If you're allowed to ask questions, but you know you're in trouble if you arrive at a specific answer, then you're not really allowed to ask questions. Well, I guess you kind of are, but they're going to be rhetorical questions only meant to prompt pre-decided answers. Functionally, there's no distinction between this form of questioning and just saying you simply won't question your faith. In either case, you're determined from the start to believe something. It's just that in one of them, you're play-acting the process of doubt to make yourself feel intellectually rigorous, while being just as determined to land in the same place. So when you cut through the Mr.
You ask too many questions.
Takes the same stand as this video. He's just more honest about it, which is why Impact 360 Institute tries to distance itself from him. However, the video can't say, ask questions but you have to come up with specific answers, so instead it'll go on to slap a thin coat of paint over this statement by turning it into, ask questions and you will come up with specific answers. It even signals this to its audience by having God exists be the belief that becomes more firmly positioned in your mind before the questioning even starts. This is basically a metaphor for what the rest of this video does, as we'll soon see.
This ongoing process of establishing or revising enables you to keep growing in your understanding of reality.
If you're asking real, non-rhetorical questions in search of open-ended answers.
But it requires that you ask good questions and diligently seek answers. But is it okay to question the Bible? According to the Christian worldview, God has revealed himself through the Bible and through the natural world. Because God is a rational mind, the natural world is structured in a way that's accessible to rational minds.
Can you pause
Thus,
it?
Boy, this is weird. All right, go ahead.
Notice how the natural world is flat.
Also, it's just it's weird. I just want to hear how you worded that one more time.
But is it okay to question the Bible? According to the Christian worldview, God has revealed himself through the Bible and through the natural world.
Now that is so interesting. That is some dubious stuff right there, right? Because you basically say, according to the Christian worldview, God has revealed himself through the Bible and nature. And that's, first off, that's ascribing a lot to the Christian worldview, like a lot. But also, it's that this is this game where they get to subsume science and everything we observe through look at the trees. But their basis for doing that is the Bible. So they present this as though that they're starting from a place where, there's the Bible, and then independently of that, there's nature, but both of them combine and join forces to present the Christian worldview, where it's really like, no, according to the Christian worldview that claims to be biblical, according to the Bible, God is the source of nature. And the Bible, it's just like, yeah.
Look, this is again a Nobel Priest Prize.
A Nobel Priest Prize
can be easily awarded to these people.
Yeah,
they didn't think of everything, because at some point someone probably got tired while he's eating some of the sacrifices that they were barbecuing, so the sweet savor could go up to heaven. He probably says, we don't have to think of everything, because their minds will fill it in for themselves, or whatever explanation they have already will be sufficient for them. At the times that the Hebrews were saying that their God created the world, there were already other religions that had been in place thousands of years before that said their gods did it.
Right.
So we have to realize that the Bible's a bit of a cultural snapshot.
100%.
Or more like a cultural photo album than a snapshot. But we're looking back into what they believed.
Right.
Sorry, we're looking back into what they wanted people to believe.
Right.
I don't know that we have evidence that the priests truly believed what's in here. I think I could argue that when you look at some of the prophets' literature that was written when they were in Babylon, some of that's probably propaganda written by the Babylonians.
Right.
For the Hebrews. It's probably that way. It's just too perfect. As I review it,
and it evolves. It's because it's the frequent. It's got the frequently asked questions, right? It's baked the frequently asked questions into the narrative, so that
into the narrative.
Yeah.
But again, the earth is
flat. Because God is
flat. There it is.
A rational mind. The
Flat
natural
disk.
world is structured in a way that's accessible to rational minds. Thus, humans, created in his image, having rational minds, can approach the natural world rationally, asking good questions and searching for answers.
The fact that the world is comprehensible to rational mind shows it was made by a rational mind thing is just silly. An environment is not understood by a rational mind because of the nature of the environment. It's understood by a rational mind because of the nature of that mind. The fact that a mind's rational means that it can assess and understand any situation it finds itself in, to varying degrees depending on how rational it is and how much information it has, and respond to that situation in the most beneficial way possible, which is ultimately the defining goal of rational thought. Sure, some situations can be more confusing and disorienting than others, but even in a weird fever dream universe, you could still catalog whatever patterns, randomness, and apparent consistencies and inconsistencies presented themselves, and navigate it the best you can while resigning yourself to its whims as much as you're forced to. To say the universe is compatible with our minds reverses the state of affairs in a way that fits the puddle analogy. We can comprehend the universe we live in because we've shaped our minds around our observations of it. This can make it feel like the universe accommodates our minds, which in turn can make us feel like it must be the product of a mind itself. But this is just us falling for that most ancient primal instinct to project our own sense of agency onto nature. Of course, the video isn't arguing that conclusion to make its point, but framing the question about doubting God in terms of how God makes the process of questioning work is just the first step of easing its audience into an answer before it's really had time to ponder the question.
In the same way also, the Bible, being an expression of God's mind, is structured in a way that makes it accessible to our minds. So, humans can approach the Bible rationally, asking good questions and searching for reasonable answers.
I guess this makes more sense than the thing about the universe, but it's just a convoluted way of expressing a really mundane idea, which is that God wrote the Bible so that his audience could understand it.
But if we do question the Bible, will it hold up or not?
Notice the shift
No.
here, and this is vital.
No.
The video started by posing the question, is it okay to doubt, and established that it is okay, indeed beneficial, to do so. So now that the question's been asked and answered, the video should be over, right? But here it's suddenly asking, what will happen when you do ask questions? I wonder why.
Well, let's take an example. Does archaeological evidence support the Bible? It's a good question. It would be a real problem if none of the people or places in the Bible ever existed.
If none of them existed? You've just
So,
given the
can you
Bible
pause
a
it?
really low bar to clear.
So notice that extreme example. If none,
Absolutely. Yeah.
if none, well, we can go to. I got a book written by somebody I went to high school with. I haven't read it yet. I would presume that the location of the book is in the United States. I would also presume that it's in an actual state in the United States, right?
Right.
That exists. The location exists. That doesn't make the book any more true.
Absolutely.
It's just it's a fact that is being used in the book and the outside world.
Exactly.
The world outside.
100%.
So the fact that there is a Jerusalem doesn't mean there's talking donkeys. It doesn't mean that there was a worldwide flood. It doesn't mean that a bunch of animals got on the boat the size of a high school football stadium. There's a lot of things it doesn't mean just because the Bible has facts inside of it. The Bible also has endless nonsense, seemingly, some extremely valuable parables, and some really horrific scenes and advice. But there it is in one collection, bound for your peace and comfort, as people would tell you.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add to that is that notion that God wrote the Bible in a rational way so it could be deciphered by people is nonsense on its face, because it's a book and books are authored by people, and it was clearly, structured and revised for human consumption. So it's more the equivalent of being impressed that a sales manual was written to be understood by potential customers. It's just ridiculous.
To your point, and if I went to Bible Gateway, I'm going to see several translations of the exact same, essentially this same set of texts, but I'm seeing various translations. Now in the United States, that's a copyright issue. But at the same time, if copyright couldn't have been an issue, you'd still see different translations because different worldviews are going to process that information in different ways.
Yeah.
There was a YouTube short where a guy that I saw today, where a guy was talking about this Hebrew word. And he says, this word doesn't have an English translation. But then he went on to tell me what it means. And I'm sitting there thinking, maybe not a single word is the translation.
Boom.
But I can show you that all day long with Latin.
Sure, exactly.
I'm building in more than one word in, it's more than one word in English, but in Latin it isn't. If I say diu in Latin, diu, it means for a long time. Well, does English have a single word that means for a long time? Ages, but you'd say for ages, something like that.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Sure, I guess in one sense I have to say that the guy is right. But in another sense, I have to say, it's not as clever as you think.
Right. And certainly
So-
doesn't meet the bar of his claim.
Exactly.
Right.
We can translate it. We have to use more than one word to do it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have anything to teach about it other than he's using his pointer to point at a word on a board saying, see, you can't do much with that. So I think the understanding has to be that the people who were coming up with this biblical text, I've said this before, they're bright people. They're not stupid. And they sort of have, think of it, the centuries that would have gone by with the questioning and them writing new stories or rewriting the old ones to answer those questions. So the fact is the Bible has been changed over time. Somebody's probably writing another translation right now, which would change it yet again.
Right.
We don't have the original manuscripts. We don't know what they would have said. I've been studying the Apocrypha this year, and it seems to me the reason why some of these books don't appear in the Bible, it's because they make Jesus look bad. They make him look like he didn't know what he was talking about. Gosh, I forget which one I was reading like 2 days ago, where it says Jesus will be born and he'll live 400 years. And then I looked to see when it was written, and it says, oh, this was written like 50 Common Era or 100 Common Era. Maybe it was that. And I'm thinking, so in 100 Common Era, you mean to tell me that they're saying Jesus is going to be born and live 400 years?
Yeah.
After, this is purportedly after Jesus had existed. So for me, like, I can't cling to the dating system that scholars give these things, because I guess I don't agree with them enough. And I don't know where they're getting their data from. A lot of them reference the Roman-Jewish War, where I'm saying, nah, I don't need that. I don't need that to happen for me to think Revelation came first.
Sure. All right, let's try to let's see how much of this we can get through.
Okay, I know you got to roll.
Yeah, I got out of here.
I do too.
It would actually be surprising if its authors, actually living in and writing about the real world, actually never refer to real people or places.
The fact is, over the last 200 years, archaeologists have uncovered a vast amount of evidence confirming the existence of people mentioned in the Bible.
Again, not surprising. The fact that we've recently started finding places that were referred to in ancient writings, the Bible just being one collection of them, is just a testament to the fact that modern advances have allowed us to access and catalog so many clues from the past.
They've also located all the major biblical cities and geographical features in the Bible.
Really? All of them? First off, saying all the major sites lets you sound ambiguously impressive while giving you unlimited space to make exceptions. I mean, where's the Garden of Eden? That one seems pretty major, but I guess not so major that we can find it. Second, it's simply impossible for this to be true in any meaningful way because the Bible is incredibly vague about most of the locations it refers to. Sure, you can kind of orient yourself, sometimes, but there's a lot of room for speculation. For example, various traditions have placed the mountains of Ararat all over the map, most notably naming this mountain Mount Ararat. And despite the fact that Noah and all the animals of the world probably didn't get off the ark and walk down this thing, there are Christians to this day who claim the ark is still up there, but that Turkey won't let you climb the mountain because I guess that would prove Christianity if you saw it. When it comes down to it, most claims that a biblical site has been found are unfalsifiable and subject to speculation. And often, as with Ararat or, say, Nazareth, Christian culture just assigned a name after the fact based on tradition. In short, this claim is even worse than false. It's conceptually incoherent.
It may be stated categorically that no archaeological discovery has ever controverted a biblical reference.
Oh, really? So archaeology has never shown us civilizations that lived straight through the global flood or predate the beginning of the universe as described in the Bible? It doesn't show a gradual development of civilization that makes an account of the first humans being proficient in agriculture sound laughable? All right then. Besides, even if this claim wasn't, obviously not true, the video isn't giving us reason to believe it. It's just showing us a quote, and that from an ordained rabbi who, along with being an archaeologist, taught seminary classes and died over 50 years ago.
Luke is a historian of the first rank. Not merely are his statements of fact trustworthy, this author should be placed along with the very greatest historians.
Not only do we have no reason to say Luke was a historian of the first rank, we don't even know who wrote the gospel that bears that name. Besides, this is nothing but a quote anyway, and that from a guy who lived from 1851 to 1939. So nice fresh citations there, video. Oh, and you want to know what else? This video shows the wrong Sir William Ramsay. Seriously, it's totally the wrong guy. Despite the label archaeologist beneath his name, this picture is of chemist William Ramsay, who was born a year after the archaeologist and died in 1916. I guess this has little to do with the point, but it does show how comically sloppy this video is.
There can be no doubt that archaeology has confirmed the substantial historicity of the Old Testament tradition.
Alright, so another quote. This is another one from a dude who's been dead over 50 years, and honestly it's such a generalized statement it doesn't matter much. So, I don't care. I mean, I do care in that I'm sad for his family that he died, but I'm sure by now they're fine and also mostly dead themselves.
So there's our answer. Archaeological evidence supports the historical reliability of the Bible.
Huh? What exactly just happened here? I mean, this video brought up archaeological support for the Bible, but then after some generalized assertions, it just tossed 3 quotes at us and said, "There's your answer," which is brushing the whole topic aside so dismissively Christians should find it insulting. But let's take even one more step back and remember what the point of this video was. You know, before it started showing quotes about archaeology from the wrong Victorian-era religious people. It was all about doubt, namely whether it's okay to doubt Christianity and the Bible, and this second part was meant to follow up on their superficial endorsement of doubt by assuring you that you'll obviously end up believing even if you do. But believing what? That's the whole trick. I don't think a doubting Christian is struggling with the question of whether ancient Hebrews knew how to integrate names and places into their scripture. They're struggling with questions about more supernatural things like miracles and the existence of God. So even showing them slam dunk evidence for some historical accuracy in scripture, which they don't do, is irrelevant to their struggle in a total bait and switch. This is where the opening insinuation pays off. If the Bible's reliability is an all or nothing proposition, then basically any historical reliability makes it more than nothing and thus everything. This makes the video meaningless to anybody looking in from the outside, but by now it should be pretty clear who this video is for and what it's meant to do. It's targeting a Christian culture that wants to have its cake and eat it too. That wants the feeling of relevance that comes from considering yourself an open-minded, inquiring, skeptical person, but also wants the feeling of security that comes from being assured that what you believe is true. But these are mutually exclusive. You can't hold on to both. So to help believers think they can hold on to both, it fuzzies the idea of doubt enough that it can act cool and truth-seeking by endorsing a milquetoast version of it. It fuzzies its concluding point so thoroughly that it can pass insinuations of mundane historical accuracy off as proof that the Bible is absolutely true, and thus that your doubts about the supernatural have been put to bed. This level of insinuation is enough for some believers, but not for all of them and not forever. And the more we can reveal the little details of how this game is being played on them and how they're being expected to play along, the more little seeds of doubt we can plant in their mind, and the more they'll start to expect.
By asking honest questions and looking for answers, we gain confidence in the Bible. The problem's not asking questions. The problem is not asking questions. Because if you don't have questions, you can't find answers. So raise your doubts. Ask good questions, search for answers, and grow in your understanding and confidence in God's Word.
Yeah, this really says it all in a nutshell, doesn't it? If you raise questions, but it's with the goal of becoming more confident in a specific answer, then you're not raising real questions. So if you're a Christian, I implore you, ask questions, but, ask them for real.
Yeah, that was fantastic. All right, we've got a few minutes here to wrap this thing up.
I would like to. I don't recall the expression, as one Christian guy, his name was Alan, said to me, "You have to doubt your doubts." I don't remember hearing that in this video. Was
Yeah,
it
yeah,
absent from this video?
yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think it was. I don't know if it was in this video, but yeah, this was a great video, and I think really kind of hit the nail on the head as far as the issues that I see with conversations around doubt, and also my experience, as a Christian dealing with it. I don't see any way around it, right? Because to me, doubt is going to sow the seeds of non-belief when taken to its natural conclusion. And in that regard, I think it is genuinely unsafe for believers and unsafe for sort of the churches and the institutions. And I really do believe for many people, it's then those relationships and those social things that keep them away from sincere doubt, because those are the things they're not willing to risk giving up.
Mm-hmm. I made a reference to Jesus living 400 years. I had sent you Pocket Locker probably Monday, I think I did, some screenshots. So I'm going to read, just so if there's a Christian watching, it says, yeah, but you didn't give a reference to that. Here it is, and that you certainly would deserve to have one in case they're doubting based on what I said. 2nd Esdras, chapter 7, I'll start at 25. And therefore Esdras, for the empty are the empty things, and for the full are the full things. Behold, the time shall come that these tokens which I have told thee shall come to pass, and the bride shall appear. Now, keep your Christian language in mind, because it's the bride of Christ, right? And she forthcoming shall be seen. Now that now is withdrawn from the earth, and whosoever is delivered from the foresaid evils shall see my wonders. For my son Jesus shall be revealed with those that be with him, and they that remain shall rejoice within 400 years. Sorry. So see, I misspoke. It's after these years shall my son Christ die. I guess, yeah, it does. It's kind of saying he'll live 400 years. And all men that have life, and the world shall be turned into the old silence 7 days, like as in the former judgments, so that no man shall remain. After the days of the world, after 7 days the world that yet awaketh not shall be raised up, and that shall die that is corrupt. Skip a little bit.
That sounds like end timesy.
That's end times. Now, again, they say this was written after the 1st century, but you can see why it's not in most Bibles, because it's already been 400 years. Jesus, if he lived, died in the 1st century, Common Era. So it says all this other stuff that is useful to them and could be great, but you can't keep it with the stuff that says Jesus will come back someday. If Jesus,
so what book is that?
This is 2nd Esdras.
And is that so? What is that? Apocryphal? So it's in what, like a Catholic Bible, but not in the evangelical one?
It's in like a Catholic Bible, an Ethiopian Bible. I got like a 1860 King James Bible.
Yeah, my Bibles have the Apocrypha in them too. I don't want a Bible without the Apocrypha, really.
Then there you go.
But just to be clear for people in the audience, right? So that's what you mean when you say why it's not in all the Bibles. So it's in the Apocrypha. All right, cool. What is the word they use? Eschatology, eschatological. That's the word I was trying to think of. Yeah, Carrie Ann, it's apocalyptic. And yeah, appreciate y'all for hitting that like. So yeah, because this might be I don't know if this is gonna hit too close, but this might be a safe. How do you deal with, so to me, I guess to speak for myself, I take issue with the unwillingness of Christians in my life to really doubt their faith.
Oh, it's compassion. That's my method. I believe it's both ways. I think some of my more devout relatives look at me and say, "Wow, he must really be struggling. He's really lost. He's lost his faith. I'll pray for him." And me, I look at
Sure.
them and I think I hope they don't miss out on too much because they believe that stuff from the Bible, which I think is, so much rubbish when it's not being beautiful. It's garbage.
Right.
But it doesn't spend all of its time being beautiful. It's horrific in places. And if you don't read that, if you just focus on the things that make you feel good and the things that approve of your lifestyle, well, my goodness, you're going to have a wonderful faith walk. If you never meet anyone like me who challenges that, you're going to have a wonderful time. So to me, it's a sort of a live and let live. According to Christianity, I'm supposed to be dealt with in the eternal hellfire. God is going to have the books open and they're going to read all these horrible things I did. And the good things I did don't matter. I didn't believe that Jesus was Lord and I jacked off a bunch. So I'm screwed. I'm going to go down to hell forever and be management. Sorry, Kenneth Copeland. I'll see you on the gang. On the work gangs, but I'll have that guy moving lava around or something of that nature. But that's what's going to befall me. That's my fate. But I think you're just dead.
For me,
and for them, that's unthinkable that you're just dead. There's supposed to be this enduring happiness that exceeds understanding from my atheist mind. Like, I don't get it like they get it.
Sure.
And it brings them joy and they have understanding and it's superb in their point of view.
Yeah, for me, it's hard because, of course, I think I try to maintain a certain level of empathy because I used to be a believer. So, I try not to get to a place where it's so foreign, the idea that people believe these things. But the issue is, to me, it's like when the rubber meets the road. I think there's what I call everyday recognition, and by that I mean I don't think you need any sort of sophisticated or special education to where the average adult Christian, or adult believer, I'm going to say above 30 years of age, they recognize that there are these other religions and they have these miracle claims, and they totally don't buy into them. And the idea that they then expect everyone around them to accept the sincerity of their belief in their religion's miracle claims, at just some point, it's like, oh, look, come on. At some level, you got to know the earth wasn't created in 6 days and that the planet's more than 10,000 years old. And sorry, I hate to break it to you, but literally evolution is the demonstration that we were not created by supernatural means. It gets to a point to be, come on already, because I want to know how do we deal with issues like, again, the real issues, the global warming, the racism, the bigotry with the LGBT community, the civil rights struggle, the need for economic injustice. And to me, the religious are often on the wrong side of history on all of these things.
Yeah.
And even when they're on the right side of history, that tends to be the individuals, not the institutions. And so I feel like you're holding up the conversation because you're still insisting that we negotiate this within the space of your faith, which you haven't given us any reason to do. But meanwhile, we really need your help over here. Like we really do. And so I guess I'm recognizing on my own part, it's an impatience with me, right? Mm-hmm. I get it. I get it. Hope, meaning, and purpose. I know how important that is to you, but come on already. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's it. That's it for me.
Well, look, when you teach your students, you show them how to build a predictive model. they can watch that evolution occur within the model, within the products that the models they produce build. They can see it. And then they can apply that to the natural world and see it again. Right? The ability that you're teaching them gives them a way to interpret things they've been seeing their whole life. That's what the Bible does too.
Right.
With your method, you don't include any nonsense like talking donkeys, talking snakes, a talking bush, a guy walking on water.
Right.
You don't include any of that. Look, I'm teaching you facts. Everything I'm showing you here can be demonstrated to be true right now.
Right.
We can run DNA tests on various culture groups from around the world, various types of whatever organisms. We can show you how things are linked together. We can even give a guess as to when the link occurred or when it was broken.
Yes.
There's stuff like that the Bible can't offer us.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
It can't. It breaks down. It breaks down.
Yeah.
But for what? 60% of the time, it's good enough. So it's hard for people like you to win the argument when most of the audience, there's no argument to be had. What you're teaching offers they don't understand the practical applications of what you're teaching in their life.
Sure.
Their minister gets up there and tells them about the woman at the well, how Jesus just seemed to know everything that ever happened to her in her whole life, even though they evidently only talked for a few minutes. You know what? That woman at the well, ladies and gentlemen of the congregation, is you.
Right.
Jesus knows everything. Oh, I could do it all day.
Right,
I could do it all. I could be a minister all day. But I can't mislead people like that, you know.
Right.
But spinning those sermons, no problem. I'm easily creative. I was creative enough for that in high school.
Right.
So, you know, and that's why I think the Gospels were written by students that were in the equivalent of high school.
I see.
Yeah, because there's so much they don't put in there that if they were more advanced, they would. At any rate, that's the challenge that you have ahead of you. But in fairness to what you do, and so that you may not be frustrated, they're not your audience.
Sure.
And they probably never will. When it comes to dealing with your family, they're not in your camp. They're over there at Jesus camp.
Right.
And now allow me to segue that. In the movie Jesus Camp, there's a kid that grabs the microphone and talks about thinking that sometimes he thinks he's a faker. That he doesn't really believe. And I don't know if the documentary filmmakers were capturing the reaction to what this young man was saying, or they just used some other reaction and stuck it in there because it seemed appropriate, right? Oh, this is what the faces were like, or did they get what the faces really were like
in the moment? Yeah,
the moment was quiet when he was saying that, and I saw that as an atheist, thinking, kid, you don't even know how many people in the room, adults and children, feel just like you do. But this kid had the courage to say it in front of his peers and those adults. My hat's off to him.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's get up out of here. You got any concluding thoughts?
That's my concluding thought.
Man, that's fantastic. Fantastic. As always, gang, thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in.
Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share links with anybody else you know that might like to check it out. And be good to yourselves
and each other.
All right, gang. Peace up out of here.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.